Hey everyone, this is HFY Galactic Empire Fall. Human-made stories, no AI noise. Because HFY needs humanity. Subscribe, and let's begin. I'm Candy. At the edge of mapped space, where the trade routes ended and old stars burned alone, there was a border no one touched. It did not look like much on a star chart. No wall, no fleet, no minefield markers, no giant warning beacons. Only a thin red line drawn across a dark region called Sector 9, and one official message attached to it in every galactic language. Human restricted zone. Do not enter. That was all. For 180 years, the line had remained there. At first, the galaxy laughed at it. Then it argued about it. Then, slowly, it learned to fear it. Not because humans attacked anyone who came close. In truth, humans rarely did anything at all. They simply watched. Their patrol ships sat far back from the line, silent and cold, never chasing anyone, never firing first. But every now and then, a probe vanished. A smuggler's ship went missing. A pirate scout stopped sending signals. And when questions came, humanity always answered with the same short sentence. You were warned not to cross. That answer only made things worse. Soon every power in the Orion Coalition had its own theory. Some said humanity had hidden an illegal fleet there. Others believed the zone protected a secret weapon older than the current galactic age. A few whispered that humans had found something in deep space that had changed them. No one had proof. But mystery has a strange power in the galaxy. It can become more dangerous than open war. That was why Ambassador Thel Soren stood inside the viewing chamber of the Coalition flagship Aster Crown, staring at the red line on the tactical display, and wondering whether history was about to become a disaster. Thel was not a soldier. He was not a spy. He was a diplomat from the Lyrian worlds, a species known for long memory and careful words. His skin was pale blue, his eyes bright silver, and his voice usually calm enough to stop arguments before they started. But not this time. This time the argument had already failed. Behind him, in the strategy chamber, military officers and coalition ministers were still speaking in sharp voices, trying to make their plan sound reasonable. It is a legal inspection mission. It is a controlled incursion. Human authority over the zone has never been independently verified. We cannot allow one species to lock away an entire sector forever. Thel had heard every version of the same idea for the last 3 days. In simple words, the coalition had grown tired of not knowing. And when powerful governments get tired of mystery, they stop asking polite questions. Thel turned away from the window as the doors behind him opened. Admiral Kor Vey entered first. He was broad, scarred, and severe, with the heavy frame of a war-bred Jath commander. His dark armored coat moved like a wall around him. He looked like a being built to end debates by walking into them. After him came Dr. Mira Hale. She was human. That fact alone made the room feel tense. Mira was not military. She was a historian and deep space systems analyst, sent by the Human Assembly as an observer. Officially, she was there to witness the coalition mission and report back. Unofficially, almost everyone believed she was there to make sure no one crossed the border. But if that was her purpose, she was failing. We begin approach in 11 minutes, Admiral Kor said. Thel gave him a tired look. Then we still have 11 minutes to stop this. Kor folded his hands behind his back. The decision was made. Bad decisions are still decisions. Kor did not smile. He rarely did. Ambassador, you were brought here to keep this diplomatic, not to prevent it. Thel glanced toward Mira. And what does the human observer say? Myra's face was hard to read. She had dark hair tied back tightly, pale skin, and the kind of quiet expression that made others speak more than they meant to. She had said very little since boarding the Aster Crown. Now she looked at the display and said, I say your mission report should end with the words approach halted by caution. Kor let out a slow breath through his nose. Again with caution. Mira turned to face him fully. Admiral, I have said this 5 times already. The zone is not hiding weapons. Then what is it hiding? Her answer came without delay. A problem. The strategy chamber went silent. Thel watched her carefully. What kind of problem? Myra's eyes shifted to the red line. The kind humans do not discuss because discussion makes people curious, and curiosity makes people reckless. Core's jaw tightened. That is not an answer. It is the only one I am allowed to give. Fell stepped closer. Dr. Hale, lives may depend on this. If there's a real danger, say it clearly. For the first time since arriving on the ship, something close to emotion crossed her face. I am trying. No one spoke for several seconds. Then Core looked toward the chamber doors. Ready the reconnaissance group. One of the officers hurried away. Fell felt cold move through him. So it was decided. No last debate. No final vote. No more delay. The coalition would send ships across the human border. Not a fleet. Not yet. Only 3 vessels. The scout corvette Needle, the science frigate Valorum, and the armed escort Stone Wake. Small enough to call it peaceful. Strong enough to survive most known threats. At least, that was what everyone kept telling themselves. The main display changed as the ships moved into formation. Their engine signatures lit up like small stars in the tactical feed. Far ahead, beyond layers of dark empty space, the boundary line glowed red. A soft tone sounded across the chamber. Human transmission incoming. Core nodded once. Audio. The voice that filled the room was calm, female, and painfully direct. This is Human Perimeter Station Orpheus. Coalition vessels approaching Sector Null. 9. Reduce speed and turn back immediately. You are not authorized to enter restricted space. Core stepped toward the console. This is Admiral Core Vey of the Orion Coalition. We are conducting a lawful inspection of an unverified exclusion zone. Our ships are under strict control. We do not intend aggression. There was a brief pause. Then the human voice returned. Admiral, listen carefully. You are making a grave mistake. Fell saw Mira close her eyes. Core answered. If there is danger, describe it. We cannot. Then you leave us no choice. The next pause felt longer. When the station replied again, the calm voice carried something that sounded almost like exhaustion. You still have a choice. Turn back. Core's tone hardened. Proceed. The transmission cut. Fell looked at Mira. They did not threaten us. No, she said quietly. They never do. On the main display, the 3 coalition ships crossed the red line. Nothing happened. For a moment, the room almost relaxed. No hidden mines. No sudden attack. No ambush fleet waiting in the dark. Just empty space. Course straightened slightly, and some of the officers exchanged relieved looks. Fell did not feel relieved. He felt the same thing he had felt when entering old Tomb World ruins on Lyra Prime as a child. An awful silence, the kind that seemed to wait. Report, Core said. A sensor officer answered. No hostile contacts. No weapons locks. No unusual engine traces. The zone appears empty. Then another voice came from the scanning pit. Correction. I am getting low-frequency signal scatter. Core turned. From where? Unknown. It's everywhere. The display shifted. A wide sensor net spread across the dark region beyond the border. At first it showed only scattered dust clouds and weak gravity wells from dead moons and drifting debris. Then the map deepened. Something began to appear beneath the emptiness. Not one object. Thousands. The room went still. The shapes were huge, old, and arranged in patterns too deliberate to be natural. Long arcs. Broken circles. Lines connecting distant points. Massive structures hidden in the black between stars, so cold and dark they had been nearly invisible. Fell stared in disbelief. They were not ships. They were not stations either. They looked like fragments of an ancient machine spread across an entire sector. Some pieces were the size of cities. Others were the size of moons. Many were damaged. Some were broken in half. And all of them were pointed inward, toward the deep center of Null 9. The science officer's voice shook as she read the data. We are detecting lattice fields, power channels, dormant relay towers, and what may be containment geometry on a massive scale. Containment. Fell repeated. Mira said nothing. Core looked at her sharply. You knew. I knew there was a structure. This is more than a structure. Yes, she said. It is. Fell stepped toward her. What is it containing? Mira looked at the display for a long moment before answering. That is the question no human wanted the galaxy asking. Before anyone could demand more, alarms burst across the chamber. One sharp pulse after another. A communications officer shouted. Energy surged across the whole sector. The display brightened as lines of faint blue light raced through the ancient structure network. Dead towers came alive. Broken rings began to glow. Fields of hidden symbols opened across the darkness like eyes. And from the center of Null 9, something answered. A sound rolled through every speaker on the Aster Crown. Not a voice. Not a signal tone. Not a weapon alarm. It sounded like metal moving under an ocean. Deep. Slow. Ancient. On the tactical feed, the 3 coalition ships froze in place. The scout corvette Needle sent a burst transmission. Control, we are reading movement ahead. Repeat, movement ahead. There is an object emerging from. The message cut into static. The science frigate Valorum transmitted next, its captain breathing hard. This is impossible. There's no mass signature large enough for. Static swallowed that too. Then the escort Stone Wake shouted one final line. It's looking at us. The transmission ended. Every screen on the Aster Crown went black. For one full second, the flagship drifted in total silence. Then a single line of white text appeared across the main display in an old human script. Myra's face lost all color. Fel looked at her. What does it say? She answered in a whisper. Outer lock broken. Warden awakening. Core slammed a hand on the command rail. Restore visuals now. The screens flashed back to life. At first Thel thought he was looking at a planet. Then he understood. Something enormous was rising from the darkness at the center of Null 9. It was larger than any warship ever built. Larger than the largest station in Coalition history. A black shape covered in ancient light, surrounded by rings of moving debris and broken machines that orbited it like dead moons. And slowly, terribly, one red eye opened in the void. Then the human station sent one final message to every ship in range. Its voice no longer sounded calm. It sounded afraid. Coalition vessels, emergency withdrawal now. This is not a defense system. Fel stared at the impossible thing on the screen. Then what is it? He whispered. Mira Hale looked at the waking giant, and when she answered, her voice carried the weight of a secret buried for centuries. It is the prison keeper, she said, and something inside the prison just noticed us. For several seconds, no one on the Aster Crown moved. The great black shape on the main screen seemed too large for the mind to accept. It rose slowly from the darkness of Sector Null 9, surrounded by broken rings, dead stations, and drifting metal ruins that looked like the bones of some ancient war. Its single red light stared across the void, not blinking, not searching, watching. Inside the command chamber, the air itself felt heavy. Admiral Corvée was the first to speak. Pull the reconnaissance crew back. Now. Orders flew across the bridge at once. Transmit emergency recall. Drive course to full response. Open retreat corridor. But the answers came back wrong. The calm officer turned, fear clear in her voice. The Needle, Valorum, and Stone Wake are not responding. Repeat the signal. We are repeating. No response. Core slammed one hand against the rail, then locked tractor links and pulled them out. A navigation officer shook his head. Admiral, the ships are drifting, but not freely. Something is holding them. On the screen, the 3 coalition vessels looked like toys hanging in deep black water. Tiny flashes from their engines showed they were trying to move, but none of them were gaining distance. Fel Soren stared at the frozen formation and felt a chill move through him. It was not the kind of fear that came before battle. It was worse. Battle meant understanding. This was something else. What is that thing doing? He asked. No one answered. Dr. Mira Hale stepped closer to the tactical display. The red light from the screen reflected in her eyes, and for the first time since this mission began, Fel saw open fear on her face. It should not be awake, she said. Core turned sharply. You will explain everything you know. Right now. Mira kept watching the screen. I do not know everything. Then start with what you do know. She took a slow breath. Humans did not build Null 9. The room went silent again. Even in that moment, the The sentence hit like a shock. Core's expression hardened. Go on. The structures inside the zone are older than modern human spaceflight. Much older. The first deep explorers found fragments of them before Earth had even joined the wider galactic community. At first, humans believed they had found the remains of a dead alien defense grid. Fell looked back at the massive shape in the dark. And later, Mira said quietly, they learned it was not a defense grid. It was a containment system. Fell felt his mouth go dry. Containing what? Mira shook her head once. That part was always sealed above my clearance. But I read enough history to understand one thing. Humanity did not claim this sector to own it. She looked around the chamber, meeting each face in turn. They claimed it because someone had to stand watch. Before anyone could speak, another alarm rang out. This one came from the long-range sensor pit. The operator shouted, "Energy movement across the containment lattice. Multiple old stations are activating." On the display, blue-white lines spread across the darkness. Ancient towers came alive. Massive arcs of hidden metal glowed beneath layers of cold dust. It looked as if an entire dead civilization was waking piece by piece. And in the center of it all, the black giant kept rising. Fell felt his hands tighten behind his back. "What is it?" he asked again, more softly this time. Mira answered in the same soft tone. "The warden." Core frowned. "The prison keeper?" That is the old human translation. Core looked almost angry at the name itself. "You mean to say humans found an alien prison, built a border around it, and expected the rest of the galaxy to simply trust them?" "No," Mira said. "Humans found an alien prison, discovered it was failing, and spent generations trying to keep everyone alive without starting a panic across known space." The strategy chamber erupted. Officers spoke over each other. "This is absurd. She is hiding something. If this is true, why was the coalition never informed? What exactly is inside that prison?" Core raised his voice and crushed the noise. "Enough." He turned to Mira. "I ask one more time. What is inside?" She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. For one long second, Fell thought she simply refused to answer. Then he realized the truth. She did not know. "I told you," she said, voice low and strained. That knowledge was sealed. Most human officials do not know. Most military officers do not know. Only the Watchers assigned to Null 9 had full clearance. Fell stared at her. "Then what do you know?" "I know old records called it a listener in the dark. I know the prison was damaged in some war, so ancient even humans only know it through fragments. I know early human expeditions lost entire crews trying to study it. And I know the final recommendation in the oldest surviving file." She swallowed. "Do not wake it. Do not speak to it. Do not let it know humanity still exists." That last sentence settled into the chamber like ice. Core looked back at the main screen. Too late for that now. Another transmission burst suddenly across every speaker. Static, heavy breathing, then a broken voice. "This is Captain Wren of the Stone Wake. Systems unresponsive. Weapons offline. Navigation locked. We have visual contact with the central object. I repeat, visual contact." A deep metallic groan cut through the message. Then the captain spoke again, but his voice had changed. Not in words, in tone. It sounded thin, distant, wrong. "It is opening." The transmission died. On the screen, the black giant split down the center. Not like a ship opening hangar doors. Not like armor unfolding. It opened like an eye. Massive layered plates rotated outward, each one bigger than a city, revealing an inner core of burning red lines. Ancient symbols moved across its surface in circular waves. Between the plates was not machinery alone. There was darkness deeper than space. A hollow that seemed too deep to belong inside any object. The science officer began reading data with rising panic. Mass fluctuations unstable. Internal space impossible. Gravitational fold detected. "This thing is larger on the inside then." Her voice broke off. Core leaned toward the screen. "Can it fire?" Mira shook her head. "I do not think that is what it does." As if the warden heard her, the space around the trapped coalition ships began to twist. Not with explosions. With shape. Stars bent around them. Light stretched. The empty black around the needle, valorum, and stone wake folded inward like cloth, being pulled by unseen hands. Fel whispered, "It is caging them." Mira said nothing, but her face confirmed it. The trapped ships were now inside glowing geometric fields that had not existed a moment earlier. Ancient prison cells. One for each ship. Core spoke fast. "Full reverse. Move the Aster Crown back now." The flagship's engines roared. The deck trembled. But on the tactical display, the ship barely moved. A low pulse rolled through the hull, like thunder trapped in steel. The bridge crew stiffened. "Status." Core shouted. The answer came from engineering. "Drive response delayed. We are encountering field interference from across the sector." Fel looked at the display and understood something terrible. They were not trapped yet, but the prison had noticed them, and it was deciding what they were. Then Human Perimeter Station Orpheus transmitted again. This time the message was broader, louder, and stripped of all formal language. "Coalition flagship, this is an emergency order. Shut down all active scans, all high-power communications, and all targeting systems immediately. Do not provoke further recognition." Core snapped back. "Recognition by what?" The answer came without pause. "By the prisoner." Those 3 words changed the room. Not just a prison, not just a machine. A prisoner. Something alive. Fel felt the old diplomatic instincts in him break under the weight of that fact. He stepped toward the console. "This is Ambassador Thel Soren of the Orion Coalition. Human Station. Tell us how to survive this." For the first time, the human voice hesitated. Then it returned, quiet and grim. "You survive by becoming uninteresting." Core's eyes narrowed. "That is not an instruction. It is the truth," the voice replied. "The warden does not destroy first. It studies. It separates. It measures threat. If the prisoner fully awakens, it will do the same. Your ships entered the outer lock. Now the system is checking whether the old war has begun again." Fel stared at the stars bending around the 3 trapped vessels. "Old war," Mira whispered. "Earth remembered something. That is why the warning on the screen said what it did." Fel turned to her. "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, every display aboard the Aster Crown flashed white. Then new text appeared. Not in human language. Not in any coalition tongue. Yet somehow the ship translated it. Species match detected. Descendant signal present. Archive query, Earth. The chamber froze. Fel looked slowly toward Mira. Her face had gone completely pale. Core spoke first. "Descendant, Earth. What is that supposed to mean?" No one answered. Then Mira whispered words that almost no one there understood at first. "Humans were here before." Fel stared at her. "That is impossible. That is what the archives tried to hide," she said. "Fragments. Old myths. Impossible dates. There were always rumors that humanity's first history was not its true first history." Core stepped toward her. "You are saying humans are connected to this prison?" Mira looked at the warden, and fear passed through her eyes like a shadow. "I am saying I think the prison knows our name." On the tactical display, the 3 trapped ships suddenly changed status. The needle went dark first. No explosion. No debris. Its signal simply vanished, as if it had been erased from reality. The chamber gasped as one. Seconds later the Valorum began transmitting a stream of corrupted data. Old star maps, broken human text, fragments of voices speaking in languages millions of people had never heard. Then that ship also disappeared. Only the stone wake remained, trapped inside its glowing cage. Captain Wren's voice returned one final time. He sounded calm now. Too calm. "This place knows us," he said. "It keeps asking where the fleet is." Core gripped the rail. "What fleet?" "Captain, report clearly." But Captain Wren only gave a weak laugh. "Not ours," he said. "Humanity's." The line filled with static. Then a new voice came through the same channel. A deep voice. Ancient. Slow. Cold. Not machine. Not fully alive either. It spoke as if remembering how language worked after an endless sleep. "Earth returns." Then the stone wake vanished too. Silence fell across the bridge. No one breathed. No one moved. The black giant in the center of Null, 9 turned its red eye fully toward the Aster Crown, and somewhere inside the ancient prison network, countless dead systems began waking one after another, like lights in a city of ghosts. Mirahale looked at the screen and understood what had just happened. The prison had not mistaken the coalition for an enemy. It had noticed the human on board, and now, after centuries of silence, the thing inside Null 9 believed Earth had come back for it. At that same moment, a final signal arrived from deeper inside the sector than any ship had ever gone. It was not a warning. It was a location request. Return to command. The war is not over. For a long moment, the command chamber of the Aster Crown felt like a frozen place in space. No one spoke. The 3 coalition ships were gone. Not destroyed. Not broken. Simply erased. Only empty darkness remained where they had been seconds before. The red eye of the massive warden in Sector Null 9 stared toward the coalition flagship as if it were thinking. Admiral Kor Vey slowly lowered his hand from the command rail. "Status report," he said quietly. His voice sounded calm, but everyone in the room knew it was forced. A sensor officer swallowed before answering. "No debris. No explosion signatures. The vessels did not break apart. They simply disappeared from our sensor grid. Jump signatures? None. Cloaking? No energy spikes to suggest that." Kor looked back at the screen. "Then where did they go?" No one had an answer. Ambassador Thel Soren stood beside the viewing display, staring at the deep black of the sector. He had studied many ancient civilizations during his diplomatic career. He had seen ruins older than most living species. But this was something different. This was not a ruin. It was still working, and something inside it had just spoken. Behind him, Dr. Mirahale was staring at the translated message that still glowed across the main display. "Return to command. The war is not over." The words felt wrong, not because they were threatening, but because they sounded like they were meant for someone else. Kor turned toward her. "You said humans might have been here before. Explain that." Mira rubbed her temples slowly. "It was always a theory," she said. "A theory based on what? Old records, strange data fragments, archaeology teams finding human genetic markers in places older than human history." Thel frowned. "That is impossible. Humanity joined the galactic community only a few centuries ago." Mira nodded. "Yes, that is what official history says." The room went quiet again. Kor's voice grew sharper. "And what do the unofficial records say?" Mira looked back at the giant warden in the distance. "They say humanity may have forgotten its own past." The words felt heavy, almost dangerous. Thel studied her carefully. "You believe humans once fought the builders of this prison?" "I do not know." "Then why did the prison ask about Earth?" Mira gave a small, helpless shrug. "That is the question humans never wanted answered." Before anyone could continue the discussion, the communications officer spoke again. "Admiral, the human station is requesting direct command contact." Kor nodded immediately. "Put them through." A new voice filled the chamber. Not the calm female operator from before. This one sounded older, tired. "This is Commander Arlen Voss of Human Perimeter Station Orpheus." Kor responded quickly. "Commander Voss, we have lost 3 ships. We need an explanation immediately." The human officer paused before speaking. "You crossed the outer containment ring." "We understand that." "No," Voss said quietly. "You do not." The tactical display shifted as a map of Sector Null 9 appeared. It showed hundreds of ancient structures, forming wide circular layers around the dark center. Commander Voss began explaining. "What you are seeing is only the first lock. The containment system was designed with multiple rings. Each ring performs a different function." Thel leaned forward. "What function does the first ring perform?" Voss answered with one word. "Identification." Kor frowned. "Identification of what?" "Visitors." The Admiral stared at the display. "So those ships were scanned?" "Yes." And then, the human commander hesitated. "They were moved." "Moved where?" "Inside." The entire room felt colder. Thel spoke softly. "You mean the prison?" "Yes." Kor slammed his fist against the rail. "You allowed this to happen." "No," Voss replied firmly. We warned you not to enter. Silence returned to the chamber. Mira looked at the display again. Commander Voss, what exactly is inside the prison? The human officer did not answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight of old fear. We call it the listener. Fel repeated the name quietly. The listener. Yes. Why that name? Because it does not sleep like a normal creature. It listens. Kor crossed his arms. Listens to what? Signals, movement, life, technology, anything that might suggest its old enemies have returned. Fel slowly understood something terrible. So, when our ships entered the sector, the listener woke up. Voss finished. Mira stared at the screen. But why did it recognize Earth? Voss's answer came slowly. Because the last beings who fought it were human. The room went completely silent. Even the quiet hum of the ship's system seemed to fade. Fel blinked. That cannot be correct. We did not believe it either. Voss said. Then how did you learn this? From the prison itself. The display shifted again. Old data appeared across the screen. Ancient symbols, broken star maps, fragments of human language, so old that the translation system struggled to process them. These were recovered from the inner archive towers of Containment Network, Voss explained. The builders of the prison recorded the war that ended here. Kor studied the files. And you are saying humans fought in that war? Yes. Against what? Voss finally gave the answer. Against the listener. Fel felt his chest tighten. But if humans defeated it, why leave it alive? Because it could not be destroyed. The words sounded simple, but they carried enormous meaning. Mira spoke quietly. So the builders created a prison instead. Yes, and humanity stayed behind to guard it. That was the agreement. Fel turned toward the main display again. The giant warden floated silently in the darkness, watching, waiting. But humanity forgot, he said slowly. Yes. Fel looked back at Mira. Your species lost its own history. She nodded once. It happens more often than people think. Kor stepped forward. This conversation can wait. The important question now is simple. He pointed toward the glowing red eye in the distance. What happens next? Commander Voss did not hesitate. If the listener believes humanity has returned, it will begin testing the prison. Testing. Looking for weaknesses. Fel felt a deep chill. And if it finds one? Voss answered in a quiet voice. Then the prison opens. Everyone in the chamber looked at the display again. The massive warden structure had stopped rising. It now hovered at the center of the sector, like a dark moon. But something else was happening. New lights were appearing across the containment network. Ancient towers were powering up. Long beams of blue energy stretched between structures. The prison was strengthening itself. Or trying to. A sensor officer suddenly spoke. Admiral, we are detecting movement inside the central object. Kor leaned closer. Explain. There are multiple internal mass readings, shifting position. Something inside is reorganizing. Fel felt a slow dread build inside him. It is waking up fully. Mira whispered. Yes. The human station spoke again. All coalition vessels must withdraw immediately. The prison will try to isolate the sector soon. Kor looked at the tactical display. How long do we have? Voss answered bluntly. Minutes. The command chamber exploded into motion. Prepare jump coordinates. Power up the engines. Plot emergency exit vector. The Aster Crown began turning slowly away from the dark center of Null 9. But as the ship moved, the red eye of the warden shifted, following them, watching. Then something else happened. A new signal appeared on the communications board. Not from the human station, not from the prison, from somewhere deep inside the sector. The signal was weak, old, almost broken. The communications officer looked confused. Admiral, we are receiving a human distress signal. Everyone in the chamber froze. Kor leaned forward. Repeat that. A human signal. Myra's eyes widened. That cannot be right. The officer checked the data again. It is using a very old human military code. How old? Kor asked. The officer swallowed. Thousands of years. Fel stared at the screen. That is impossible. But the signal continued. Faint, cracked with static, yet unmistakably human. A voice slowly emerged from the noise. To any surviving command, this is Earth Expedition Fleet, containment holding, prisoner still active. The room went silent. Mira stepped closer to the console. Her hands trembled slightly. Play the rest. The voice returned, tired but determined. If anyone receives this, do not release the listener. Repeat, do not. The message suddenly cut off. At that exact moment, the giant red eye of the warden brightened. A deep pulse of energy rolled across the entire sector. Every ancient tower lit up at once. Commander Voss shouted through the comm channel. The prison is reacting. Something triggered the second lock. Fel looked at Mira. What, did we just wake up? Mira stared at the dark center of the sector, and for the first time since this mission began, she looked truly terrified, because the signal they just received did not come from outside the prison. It came from inside it, and that meant only one thing. Somewhere in the darkness of Null 9, a human fleet had been trapped there for thousands of years, and something inside the prison had just realized they were not alone anymore. For a long moment after the ancient human message ended, the command chamber of the Aster Crown felt completely silent. No one spoke. No one moved. On the main display, the dark center of Sector Null 9 burned with strange light as the ancient prison systems activated one after another. Ambassador Thel Soren slowly turned toward Dr. Mira Hale. You heard it, he said quietly. Yes, Mira answered. A human fleet trapped inside the prison. She nodded slowly. That message was real. Admiral Corvey crossed his arms, his expression hard. Thousands of years old, he said. That is what the signal code suggests. Kor shook his head. That makes no sense. Humanity was barely leaving its own star system at that time. Mira looked at the glowing prison network. That is what modern history says. Fel felt the weight of those words settle heavily in the room. Modern history, which meant there might have been an older history, one that had been forgotten or hidden. The sensors suddenly beeped again. A young officer looked up from her station. Admiral, energy output from a central object is increasing. Kor stepped closer. How fast? Rapidly. It is pulling power from the containment network itself. Mira frowned. That should not happen. Fel glanced at her. What do you mean? The prison system was designed to hold the listener, not feed it. On the display, bright blue energy beams stretched between the ancient towers surrounding the sector. But now the beams were changing direction. Instead of flowing inward to strengthen the prison walls, they were flowing toward the giant black structure at the center. The warden, Commander Voss's voice returned over the comm channel. We're seeing the same thing here. The warden is absorbing power from the lattice. Kor's voice grew sharp. Is that supposed to happen? No, Voss replied. It means the containment protocol is failing. Fel's stomach tightened. What does that mean for the prisoner? Voss answered in a single grim sentence. It means the listener is trying to escape. The words hung in the air like ice. The tactical display zoomed in toward the center of the sector. The giant warden structure now glowed with lines of red light spreading across its surface, like cracks in burning metal. Massive armored plates continued to shift apart. Between them, the deep hollow inside the structure grew wider. Dark, endless, and something inside that darkness was moving. The sensor officer whispered, We are detecting internal mass expansion. Kor turned. How large? The officer swallowed before answering. Admiral, larger than the warden itself. The room went still again. Fel stared at the display. How can something inside be larger than the structure containing it? Mira gave a slow breath. That is why it was called the listener. Everyone turned toward her. The listener does not exist fully in normal space, she continued. It stretches across multiple dimensions of reality. The prison does not hold its entire body, only the part that can enter our universe. Kor frowned. So what we see is only a piece of it. Yes, Fel whispered, and that piece is already larger than a moon. Mira nodded. That is why the ancient builders created such a massive containment system. Before anyone could speak again, the sensors began screaming warnings. Admiral! Gravitational surge detected. The main display flashed a space around the warden twisted violently. Stars stretched like long threads of light. Debris fields rotated slowly, as if caught in a giant invisible current. The officer shouted again. The prison rings are losing alignment. Across the sector map, the circular network of ancient stations began shifting out of position. Some towers flickered. Others went dark completely. Commander Voss's voice came through again. The outer lock is collapsing. If the listener breaks the second ring, the containment field will fail. Kor turned sharply. What happens if that happens? Voss did not hesitate. Then the prison opens. Fel looked at the screen. And the prisoner leaves. No one needed to say the rest. If something powerful enough to require a prison this large escaped, entire civilizations could disappear. The Aster Crown trembled as its engines pushed harder. The navigation officer shouted, "Jump coordinates ready." Kor nodded. "Prepare emergency jump." But before the order could be completed, another signal appeared. This one was stronger than the ancient message from before. The communications officer blinked in surprise. "Admiral, we are receiving another human signal." Kor looked confused. "From where?" The officer pointed toward the center of the sector. "From inside the prison." Mira leaned forward. "That is impossible." The officer shook her head. "It is real. And it is recent." "Play it," Kor ordered. Static filled the chamber. Then a voice appeared. Clearer than before. Stronger. "This is Commander Elias Ward of the Earth Expedition Fleet." The room froze. Fel whispered, "That voice." Mira nodded slowly. "It is human." The signal continued. "To any human forces receiving this transmission, containment is held for 12,000 cycles. Prison integrity is failing. If reinforcements exist, respond immediately." Kor stared at the display. 12,000 cycles. Mira did the quick calculation in her head. Approximately 12,000 years. Fel felt the air leave his lungs. A human fleet has been fighting this thing for 12,000 years. The message continued. Listener activity increasing. If prison fails, execute Protocol Ashfall. The signal suddenly ended again. Silence returned. Fel turned slowly toward Mira. "What is Protocol Ashfall?" She shook her head. "I do not know." But her eyes suggested she was afraid to guess. Before the conversation could continue, the warden moved again. The enormous structure rotated slowly in space. The red eye shifted toward the Aster Crown. And this time, it was not alone. Inside the widening hollow of the prison core, something enormous pushed against the inner walls. A shape began to appear. At first it looked like a long shadow. Then the sensors clarified the image. It was not a single shape. It was many. Long, branching structures moved through the dark interior, like massive roots of a living tree. Each one glowed faintly with strange red light. The sensor officer's voice trembled. "It is expanding." Fel whispered, "The listener." Mira nodded. "Yes." But then she noticed something else. Another group of signals appeared on the tactical screen. Small, fast, moving out from the darkness near the prison core. Kor saw them too. "Identify those objects." The sensors locked on. Multiple vessels. Old ones. Very old. The officer spoke slowly. They matched the energy signature of the ancient human signal. Fel stared. "You mean?" "Yes," the officer said. "Those ships are human." Mira stepped closer to the display, disbelief written across her face. They survived. On the screen, a formation of battered ships slowly emerged from the shadows of the prison interior. Their hulls were scarred and ancient. Their engines burned with weak but steady light. They looked like relics from another age, but they were still flying. Commander Voss's voice returned over the comm. "We are detecting them too. Those ships, they are not part of modern human fleets." Mira whispered, "They are the original Guardians." Kor frowned. "The ones who fought the listener." "Yes." The ancient fleet formed a defensive line near the opening prison core. Even from far away, their weapons began firing beams of pale energy toward the growing mass inside the warden. The listener reacted instantly. The red root-like structures snapped outward. Energy pulses spread across space. Several ancient ships vanished in bursts of light, but the others kept fighting. Fell stared at the screen. They have been holding this line for 12,000 years. Mira finished his thought quietly, and now they cannot hold it alone. The ancient fleet began transmitting again. Their signal reached the Aster Crown clearly this time. This is Earth Guardian Fleet, prison failure imminent, requesting assistance from any surviving human command. Fel looked slowly toward Mira. You are the only human here. She stared at the ancient ships. Ships crewed by people who had lived and died fighting a war no one in the modern galaxy even remembered. Her voice came out soft but steady. Then I suppose the message was meant for us. At that exact moment, the prison core cracked open a little wider, and for the first time, the galaxy saw the true shape of the listener beginning to emerge. For several seconds after the ancient human fleet appeared on the display, no one inside the Aster Crown spoke. The room felt smaller, not because the chamber had changed, but because the truth outside the ship had suddenly become much larger than anyone had imagined. On the screen, dozens of old human warships drifted in formation near the open prison core. Their hulls were scarred and broken, covered with patches of ancient repair metal. Many of their engine trails flickered weakly. They looked like ghosts from a forgotten age. Yet they were still fighting. Beams of pale blue light shot from their weapons and struck the massive red structures, pushing out from inside the warden. Each beam caused small explosions across the surface of the growing monster, but the damage barely slowed it. The listener continued expanding, slowly, patiently, like something waking from a very long sleep. Admiral Kor, Vase stared at the screen with narrowed eyes. That fleet should not exist. Dr. Mira Hale did not look away from the display, but it does. The ancient ships fired again. One of them exploded instantly as a massive red tendril snapped outward from the prison core and struck it. The ship vanished in a flash of white light, but the rest of the fleet kept moving, still fighting, still holding their line. Ambassador Thel Soren spoke softly. They have been alone here for 12,000 years. Mira nodded once, and they never stopped. Another signal from the ancient fleet reached the Aster Crown. The voice sounded older now, tired, but still strong. This is Commander Elias Ward, Guardian Fleet Command, requesting identification of responding vessel. Kor crossed his arms. Answer him. Mira stepped forward. Her hands trembled slightly as she activated the communications console. This is Dr. Mira Hale of the Human Assembly, she said. There was silence for several seconds. Then the ancient voice returned. Human Assembly. The confusion in the man's voice was clear. Mira continued. Yes, humanity still exists. Earth still stands. More silence followed. Fel saw Myra's throat tighten as she waited. Finally, the ancient commander spoke again. Then the long watch was not in vain. The words felt heavy. Mira closed her eyes for a moment before continuing. Commander Ward, your signal said the prison is failing. Yes, Ward replied. We have held the containment field for many cycles, but the listener grows stronger. The lattice towers are breaking. The tactical display showed exactly what he meant. Across the sector, several ancient towers had already gone dark. The circular prison network was losing its shape. If the rings collapsed completely, nothing would hold the listener inside. Admiral Kor leaned closer to the console. What do you need? Ward's answer came without hesitation. Human command authority. The room became quiet again. Mira frowned slightly. What do you mean? The prison system recognizes only one authority code, Ward explained. The code of the original Earth Command Fleet. Fel slowly understood. You are saying only humans can control the prison. Yes. Kor glanced toward Mira. Can you? She shook her head slowly. No. Modern human systems do not even know these codes. Ward spoke again. They are stored inside the Guardian Fleet command ship. The tactical display zoomed toward the center of the ancient fleet. One ship appeared larger than the others. Its hull was long and narrow, covered with layers of reinforced armor. But even from a distance, it looked badly damaged. That vessel is the Aegis of Dawn, Ward said, command carrier of the First Earth Defense Fleet. Mira stared at the ship. That vessel is older than recorded human history. Yes, and it still flies. Ward's voice softened. For as long as the prison stands. Fel looked at the display again. The ancient fleet continued firing at the expanding red shapes inside the prison core. But the listener was pushing harder now. More tendrils were forcing their way through the opening in Warden. Each one was enormous. Each one glowed with burning red light. The sensor officer spoke again. Energy levels rising. The listener is breaking through the second containment ring. Commander Voss's voice returned from Human Station Orpheus. We see it too. If the third ring collapses, nothing will hold it. Fel turned toward Mira. What happens then? She answered quietly. Then the listener spreads. The words sounded simple, but they carried terrible meaning. Kor spoke again. Commander Ward, if we reach your command ship, can you activate the prison controls? Yes. And stop the escape? Ward hesitated before answering. No. The Admiral frowned. Then what can you do? Ward's voice grew heavy. I can activate Protocol Ashfall. Fel felt a cold chill. What is that? The ancient commander answered with brutal honesty. It destroys everything inside the sector. Silence fell across the chamber again. Mira whispered. You mean the prison? Yes. And the listener? Yes. Fel looked toward the center of Null 9. And your fleet? Ward's voice did not change. We accepted that fate long ago. Fel turned away from the display. For 12,000 years those people had guarded the galaxy from something terrible. And if necessary, they were ready to die to stop it. Kor spoke again. There must be another way. Ward replied simply. If there was, we would have found it by now. The Aster Crown trembled again as another pulse of energy spread across the sector. More prison towers went dark. The listener pushed further out of the warden. The red eye grew brighter. Watching. Learning. Mira suddenly spoke. Commander Ward, the prison reacted when it detected human presence. Yes. That means the system still recognizes human authority. Correct. Myra's eyes moved across the tactical map. Thinking quickly. If I reach the Aegis of Dawn, I might be able to access the command interface. Ward sounded surprised. You are not a military officer. No, but I am human. Fel looked at her. You plan to board that ship? Yes, that is inside the prison. I know. Kor studied her carefully. You understand the risk. Mira nodded. If the prison recognizes me, I may be able to stabilize the containment rings. Ward spoke again. That possibility exists. Fel asked quietly. And if it fails? Ward answered calmly. Then we activate Ashfall. The tactical display flashed again. The listener forced another massive structure through the prison opening. This one looked different. Long, curved, covered with glowing symbols. The sensor officer gasped. That structure alone is larger than our flagship. Fel whispered. It is only part of the creature. Mira stepped back from the console. Admiral, we do not have much time. Kor looked toward the ancient fleet, then toward the prison, then toward Mira. You are asking to take a shuttle directly into the center of the prison. Yes. You may not come back. I know. Fel stepped forward. I will go with her. Both Mira and Kor turned toward him. You are not human, Kor said. No, Fel replied. But if diplomacy has any purpose, it is moments like this. Mira gave a small, grateful nod. Kor sighed heavily. You are both insane. But he turned toward the navigation officers. Prepare a shuttle. The chamber erupted into motion again. Coordinates were plotted. Flight paths calculated. Outside the ship, the ancient human fleet continued its desperate battle. And slowly, the prison continued to break. The listener pushed further into open space. Its red eye burned brighter than ever, watching the approaching shuttle as it prepared to enter the prison. Because somewhere inside the ancient structure, the creature remembered humanity. And this time, it was ready to greet them properly. The small shuttle Aurora 7 drifted away from the massive hull of the Aster Crown. Compared to the giant warship, the shuttle looked tiny and fragile. Yet it carried the only chance the galaxy had. Inside the cockpit, Dr. Mira Hale sat in the pilot seat, while Ambassador Phil Soren watched the dark prison sector through the forward window. The view was terrifying. The ancient prison of Null 9 was breaking apart. Across the darkness, massive towers flickered as their power faded. Long beams of blue energy snapped and vanished one by one. Broken pieces of the containment network floated through space like shattered bones. And at the center of it all, the listener continued to rise. The creature was no longer hidden inside the warden structure. Now parts of its true form were visible. Long red structures stretched outward like massive branches. They moved slowly, but each movement warped the space around them. The stars bent and twisted as if gravity itself obeyed the creature. Fel spoke quietly. It is larger than any living thing the galaxy has ever known. Mira kept her eyes on the navigation display. Yes, and it remembers humanity. Yes, the words felt heavy. The shuttle passed through one of the outer prison rings. The blue energy field crackled across the shuttle's shields, but the old containment systems did not stop them. Instead, something strange happened. Ancient towers along their path suddenly lit up. Lines of soft white light appeared across their surfaces. The prison was recognizing them. Fel noticed it first. The towers, they are reacting to you. Mira nodded slowly. The system is detecting human biological markers. So it sees you as part of the command authority. Hopefully. Ahead of them, the ancient human fleet fought on. More ships had been lost since the shuttle launched. Several broken hulls floated in the darkness, silent and drifting, but the remaining vessels still held their defensive line around the command ship Aegis of Dawn. The ancient carrier looked battered. Huge sections of its armor were missing. One engine burned weakly, while another hung completely silent. Yet the ship still stood between the listener and the rest of the galaxy. The comm system crackled. Commander Elias Ward's voice returned. Shuttle Aurora 7, this is Guardian Command. Your approach path is clear. Mira answered quickly. We see you, Commander. Fel leaned closer to the forward window. Even from a distance, he could see damage across the hull of the Aegis of Dawn. Ancient repair plates covered most of the ship. 12,000 years of war had left its mark. Fel whispered, how did they survive this long? Mira answered softly, because they believed someone would come back. The shuttle moved closer. As it approached the ancient carrier, docking lights flickered to life along one of the ship's broken hangar bays. Inside the bay, a small group of figures waited. Human figures. The shuttle landed slowly on the damaged deck. For a moment, neither Mira nor Fel moved. Then the hatch opened. Cold air drifted inside. They stepped out. The hangar was enormous, but much of it had collapsed over the centuries. Broken support beams and old equipment floated slowly in low gravity. The group of waiting humans stood quietly nearby. They looked very different from modern humans. Their uniforms were ancient military designs. Their armor was scratched and worn. Many of them carried old-style weapons. At the front of the group stood a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. Commander Elias Ward. He looked older than any human Mira had ever seen. Not physically older, but older in spirit. His eyes carried the weight of thousands of years. When he saw Mira, he slowly removed his helmet. So Earth survived, he said. Mira nodded. Yes. Ward gave a small, relieved smile. Good. The moment was quiet. Then the ship shook violently. Everyone looked up. Far outside the hangar, the listener pushed another massive tendril through the broken prison core. The creature was almost free. Ward turned back to Mira. We do not have much time. He motioned for them to follow. They walked quickly through dark corridors, filled with old equipment and damaged control panels. Everywhere they went, signs of long survival filled the ship. Hydroponic gardens grew along the walls. Old repair drones floated through maintenance tunnels. Living quarters had been rebuilt again and again over the centuries. Fel looked around in quiet awe. Your people built a civilization here. Ward nodded. We had to. They reached the central command room. Unlike the rest of the ship, this chamber still looked almost new. In the center of the room stood a tall control pillar, covered with glowing human symbols. The prison command interface. Ward stepped beside it. This system controls the remaining containment towers. Mira approached the console. The moment her hand touched the surface, the pillar came alive. Old screens lit up across the chamber. Ancient text appeared. Human command signal detected. The system paused. Then another line appeared. Genetic match confirmed. The command pillar slowly unlocked. Ward looked at Mira. It recognizes you. She took a deep breath. Then we still have a chance. The tactical display appeared on the main wall. The prison network filled the screen. Most of the outer rings had already collapsed. Only a few towers still held the containment fields. The listener continued forcing its massive body through the opening. Ward spoke quietly. You can attempt to stabilize the prison. Mira studied the data. Her eyes widened. It will not hold. Ward nodded slowly. We know. Fell stepped forward. Then ashfall is the only option. Mira looked at the screen again. If she activated ashfall, the prison system would trigger a massive chain reaction across the containment towers. The entire sector would collapse into a violent gravitational storm. Nothing inside would survive. Not the listener. Not the ancient fleet. Not the Aegis of Dawn. Ward watched her carefully. You are the only one who can authorize it now. The ship shook again. Outside, the listener forced its enormous eye fully into open space. The red light burned across the prison network. And suddenly, the creature spoke again. Its voice spread across every communication channel. Deep, ancient, cold. Earth returns at last. The chamber fell silent. Mira slowly placed her hand on the command console. The system waited. One command. That was all it needed. Ward looked at her calmly. The galaxy must survive. Fell placed a hand on her shoulder. No civilization stands alone forever. Your people protected everyone for 12,000 years. Myra's voice trembled slightly. And now we finish it. She looked at the screen one last time. The listener was almost free. But the ancient fleet still fought bravely around the prison core. They had never abandoned their duty. Now it was her turn. Mira entered the command code. The console flashed. Protocol ashfall authorization accepted. Across Sector Null 9, the remaining prison towers suddenly ignited with blinding light. Energy surged through the containment network one final time. The listener realized what was happening. Its voice roared across space. No, but it was too late. The prison had awakened one last time. And this time, it was not holding the creature inside. It was destroying everything. Ward looked calmly toward the command screen. The watch is over. Fell closed his eyes. And Mira Hale whispered the final words humanity had carried for 12,000 years. For Earth. Outside the ship, the prison collapsed into a storm of light, so bright it could be seen from the edge of the galaxy. The listener vanished inside the explosion, and the ancient guardians of Earth completed the last duty of a war the galaxy had never known. The war that humanity had fought, to keep everyone else safe.